and we can for a future review of any of your teammates. And at this time, I'm very pleased to introduce today's guest presenter, Mr. Dan Ahern, Senior Manager, GM Financial, and as many of you know, the former Zone 4114 Zone Manager. So that, Mr. Ahern, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Kevin, and good afternoon, everybody. I have Melissa Tenlin in with me that is going to help me through specifically the Lease dashboard report, which just a little bit of background. We've been working on this for quite some time. The Lease dashboard actually has been out there from a Buick GMC perspective probably since October. We got Chevy reconfigured and launched here in early February. So if you haven't seen it yet, it's probably, again, simply because of the timing of that information. And I should throw in that Cadillac at that same time as Chevrolet. So as Kevin was saying, we're going to go through some information here, and we're going to tie the two pieces together for you. We did put the lease and retention playbook out there. What we were doing is we were getting a lot of calls that were asking a variety of questions. Those questions ranged from, you know, tell me when you're communicating to the customer and how you're communicating and whatnot, to, hey, your prices are a little too high, you know, on the vehicles that are being made available to us, to, hey, I don't know what my lease maturity portfolio looks like, and I'd like to have a little bit more information. So as we were getting these questions, we said it would be really nice if we put together a comprehensive playbook that could be used by both our field organization and by you as dealers. So a couple of weeks ago, that was posted. We worked through the holidays and got all of those pieces together. So what we created was this comprehensive source for you to look at and have accessible by you, your managers, whoever needs to have access to it. And the intent is twofold. The first one is to improve your sales. And I'll show you some numbers from the standpoint of overall retention. And then increase your profit opportunities. And this is specifically on the back end. So it's not only let's sell that lease customer another vehicle, but once they're you know, out the door and you have that other asset there, is there another opportunity from a profit perspective for you? All right, why is this important to us? Many of you are aware and probably are in the situation right now where you probably don't have any Ally leases or very limited Ally leases. If you recall, Q1 of 2015, GM Financial became lease exclusivity for GM. So as we've progressed through those 3 years or so, the number of leases that are out there have continually gone down and down from both US Bank and from Ally. So what that means is these 400 returning leases are now out there for GM, and it grows in 2019 as well. And you're probably aware of the portfolio of vehicles that you have coming into your various stores. Other thing that ties very closely to that is GM Financial has been able to obtain an 82%, this is JD Power PIN data, they have an 82% GM financial loyalty, or GM loyalty. So what that means is 82% of these customers on your list are coming back and leasing another vehicle from GM. So it's the highest. It's the highest by at least 5 points over the next closest. So it really gives us an opportunity to make sure we give the customer the best experience and keep them coming back. All right, more of why this is important. We had to, again, put together the tools that assist in maintaining this relationship with the customer and providing this profit opportunity. So we took a look, and again, I'm just thinking of the question that came in around what are we communicating to the customer, when are we communicating that, and why is that important for me to know that? So we need to know we need you to know what we're doing. We also need you to know what GM Financial is doing, but we also need, what's the role of the dealership in these various stages of what we're doing. So the playbook takes us through each of those. And what we've developed is this step-by-step guide. If you go into Global Connect, you can pull down the playbook and you can print off copies of this step-by-step guide. Your field team will also have access to this. Once you're up and running, the step-by-step guide goes away. But I think until that happens, being able to walk through these steps to make sure, again, that we're hitting each of these areas and making sure we're maximizing the opportunity is important. So this will come back later, but it's going to be our guide for going through the information today. And we'll start by, this is the first page before we get into the actual. So you can see this is probably hard to see on your screens, but it's intended to be that, to show you depth of what's in the playbook. This is the actual table of contents from our playbook. We're not going to touch on each of these today, but I will have a slide at the end that kind of recaps some ones that we didn't touch. But it's a very comprehensive book that, again, entails everything from 12 months out of communication to that customer, through word tracks, through purchasing the vehicle, and pre-term inspections, etc. So a very thorough list of information available for you. All right. So identifying the opportunity. 400,000, 250,000 of those are you that are on the phone, Chevrolet. These lease customers are your best leads. Again, remember, think about a dealer, and we have quite a few here in the Detroit area that have 100 plus leases that are due every month. And if you have an 82% loyalty of those people coming back to GM, that's a pretty good way of starting the month, knowing that you have that opportunity out there. I'm going to turn it over here shortly, and Melissa's going to take us through the lease dashboard. She's worked extensively on it, in creating it, getting it ready for you, the Chevrolet dealers, and the rest of the organization. This shows your opportunity down to a dealer level of what's your GMF, and it's just GMF, so it's not your ally. You're returning leases over a 13-month period, and it's a common report for all channels. So if you're on the phone and you happen to have Cadillac, or you have Buick GMC as well as Cadillac and Chevrolet, you'll be able to have your manager give you a total or break it into the various components by brand. So now with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa, and Melissa will take you through the dashboard itself.
All right, thank you, Dan.
We're going to swap computers here, so give us a few seconds.
So what you see on the screen right now is the dealer overview page. Right before this screen, there is on the actual dashboard a glossary page. That's not included here, but it does have the terminology that's used throughout the dashboard. So if you have any questions of what a specific definition or term means, I'd go to the glossary first, just to make sure that it's in there, and it'll let you know what that means. So on this dealer overview page, the top graph has a 13-month rolling time frame. So if you're able to see on the screen, it has July 17 to July 18. So when this was pulled in January, it was previous 6 months and then also forward-facing 6 months. So that way you guys are able to see your past performance and how you did, and then also what's to come and how you're performing. And it also factors in pull ahead. So that's why we want to include those future months in there. And then I'll skip ahead to this next. So it zoomed in a little bit on February 18. And just to point out, this is GM financial information. So it's only GMF lease to GMF lease. So you might have some ally leases still returning and trickling in. By this summer, they'll completely drop off. So you might have a few leases that don't show up on here because they're ally data, but the majority of them right now should be GM financial and should appear on here. So the customers do appear in the months that they're scheduled on their contract to mature. So if this was pulled in October and someone returned, a February customer returned in October, they would show here on the February column. if that's what their contract said. So this dealer in particular has 338 scheduled maturities that were scheduled to mature on their contract in February. This was pulled in January, and we had already had 113 of those customers return or terminate their lease, is the terminology that we use. And this dealer retained 54 of those 113. And below that, it will tell you what brand the customer released. So 13 of those customers leased a Chevrolet, and 41 of those customers leased a Buick GMC. And so that would be if the dealer has multiple brands, that's where they'll show. So if they would have had Cadillac, they'd show below that. Or if you just have one brand, obviously they'd only be in the one row. And so the retention rate is taken out of that 113. So it's just taken out of the ones that have returned. So in the forward-facing months, that will change every so often as more and more customers return, and it gets closer to that month. But this dealer, they retained 54 out of 113, so they have a 48% retention rate in February of 18. So that leaves 225 vehicles that are still outstanding. So they have yet to turn in their lease. And we do have inequity information. So one of those customers are noted as having equity on their vehicle, and that is sent over from GMF as anyone over $1 in equity. So that was something that dealers had asked for that number. So it is $1 in equity. And then below that, we have if they're getting a private offer. So that is sent over from our CRM team. And on the further pages, we'll get into a little bit more detail of what customers are actually getting those offers. So on this next portion, it takes the total, so the rolling 13-month time frame, and gives you an average of your dealership. So this dealer has an average retention rate of 50%. And of those vehicles that have already terminated, they have an average pull-ahead timing of 1.3 months. And then from the drop-down right above it, you can choose to compare your dealership to the DMA or district that you're in, just to kind of give you a little bit of a comparison of how you're doing compared to the other dealers in the DMA or district. And it will highlight as green or red if you're performing above or below. And the pull-ahead timing is in months, and we usually find that the sooner dealers are pulling their vehicles ahead, the higher retention rate that they have. So that's why it's noted on here. And then this bottom portion that we'll zoom into is the same time frame as the top table, but it gives you a view down to the model level. So if we're looking at the first row here, this dealer had 186 vehicles that have already terminated in this 13-month time frame, so July 17 to July 18. They retained 80 of those customers, 22 of them leased a BG, and 58 of them leased a Chevy. And so that gives you a cruise retention rate of 43%. And so it is dealer retention rate. It's not to the actual make or model view, but since this is a dealer dashboard, it's whatever the dealer's retention rate. So if they have multiple brands, that is factored in there. And then right below that are the vehicles that are still outstanding. So when this was pulled in January, it was January to July. This dealer still had 93 cruises that were still out there and outstanding to turn in. If any of them were in equity, they would show in that column. And then 5 of those cruises are receiving a private offer. And the average outstanding payment is calculated from the vehicles that are still outstanding. So the average payment of those 93 cruises is $157. And that's what the customer actually pays, so it doesn't factor in any trade-in information or if they had a down payment. And then it also doesn't have tax. But it should give you guys a pretty good idea. You should know what your vehicles are leasing for and if you can get that customer into a new vehicle. The current featured payment column that you see is something that just the Buick GMC team decided to do, but it'll have the current advertised payment. But again, you should be pretty aware of what your vehicles are currently selling for, and you should be able to look at what your customer is currently paying. So this next page is all of the unretained vehicles. So it'll show you the current month, and this was pulled again in January. So these are all of the vehicles that we know, because it's GMF data, that these vehicles did not release at this dealership. So the top portion will tell you, because it's GMF to GMF data, that these are the number of customers that we know returned and who leased a new GM vehicle, but they leased it at another dealer. So those are kind of all lost opportunities. And if you filter at the top, you can look at by brand. So if this was filtered by Chevy, all of your Chevys that returned, 33 of them decided to lease, but at another dealer. So that could be a number of things, just to look into your BDC. Maybe you didn't reach out to that customer, things like that. And it'll show the pull ahead timing over to the side. This next portion is right below that on the table, and it gets down to the VIN 8 level, and will show you by model of the vehicles that returned but didn't retain. And so the ones will appear at the top that we know leased another GM vehicle, but because it is GMF lease to GMF lease data, the ones that show a blank defection reason, it could have been 3 things. So that customer could have chosen to purchase or lease at another manufacturer, so we don't have that information. And the other number 2 could have been they purchased at a different GM dealer. So because it wasn't a lease, we don't have that information, or they could have purchased at this dealership. So this dealer could have retained one of those cruises, but since it wasn't a lease, it doesn't show up here. So we usually recommend that the dealer can go in, look up their VIN 8 information and see what happened with that customer, because they might have sold them a CPO, but because this is a lease dashboard, they don't appear as retained. And this last portion here is where it gets down to the big detailed level. And this looks out, there'll be one tab that looks out 6 months, and then the next tab will look out 7 to 12 future months. So hopefully you become really familiar with these tabs. But right now, this is focused in on April 2018, and this is where it will let you know what offer the customers are receiving. So for example, this dealership has 2 vehicles in April 2018 that are in equity right now. And again, that is only $1 or more, so it could be many different things, but we recommend that you go in GMF Dealer Source, pull up that customer and see how much equity they have. And these are highlighted in kind of a recommendation of how we think that you'd be reaching out to customers. So then right below that shows all the customers that right now are in medium high risk and receiving our current CRM pull ahead offer. And so you'd be able to go in, by VIN, pull up the customer and see exactly what offer they're getting.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. And just that's the first and probably the most critical part of this is this report, because this is to identify that opportunity and just pull through the information there and get down to those last 2 areas that Melissa really kind of touched on. Now you're going to have the ability, and this really enhances other portions of information that's out there for you. So this kind of gives you the beginning, and then I'm going to take you through the rest of the playbook, which kind of brings these all together. But this will allow you, like your double cab offer this month, or if you have an enhancement to a particular vehicle line, you can look in here and identify those VINs that will be good opportunities to reach out to. And as Melissa said, you saw this dealer actually doesn't perform to the level of the average. 2.5 months is typically what vehicles are being pulled ahead. So, if the further out you can get with the customer, the higher satisfaction we see in the ability, obviously, to put them into a vehicle at or near the same price is pretty critical to that. So having the payment and the other information there is important as well. So I will move forward. So the second step of this is to take you through, all right, what are you telling our customers? When are you telling them that, et cetera? So this is directly from the playbook. There are 4 levels of communication, or 4 sources of communication. The brands, so Chevrolet reaches 12 months out and other periods as well. GM Financial, 12 months out as well, and some other periods of time in there. Retail, these are the offers that get sent out. That's either, right now, it's typically either the lease loyalty offer or the lease pull ahead offer, which is the payment waiver and the incentive that goes with it. Those are typically 6 months. We're actually going further right now, especially with the Northeast play for the month of February. That's actually 8 months out. So we're 8 months from today. So you should be looking at, your maturities that go through October as an example. And then U.S. dealership, you have your CSSR communication that enhances all of these. Another useful piece here, so, if your BDC or manager that reaches out needs to know when the communication happens, they can have this handy for them to be able to communicate. And I like to use the 4-month as a example in this. So at 4 months, we are sending out a communication, and in the instance of the Northeast in the month of February, we're sending out a communication to the customer that says you're eligible for a waiver of 4 payments and a cash incentive offer, I think up to $2,500. You're at the dealership sending a communication through your CSSR that says, hey, we're your dealership, here's the contact information, let us know if we can do anything to help you. And GM Financial is reaching out at the same time and communicating with the customer, hey, the lease end guide is coming your way, or is here, and within that lease end guide, there's some tools to determine tread depth and number of scratches by panel, et cetera, to start to get us towards the end of your lease. And if you have any questions, please get in touch with us. So the person that reaches out to the customer now can have a pretty good script of what they can communicate with the customer on these various pieces. All right. The other thing that we were asked on that, and I think you're all aware of going in and pulling up your web manifest list, so I'm not going to go through step by step, but there is a portion in that we were asked is show me the creative that the customer is receiving. So this takes you through, and this is again in the playbook, step by step. Once you click on your manifest list and pull it up, that area in the middle there that you see where it says click view, if you click view, it will show you the creative that the customer receives. So pretty simple again for you to have a piece for somebody that might want to see, okay, Melissa, here's what you received. You have a payment waiver for 4 monthly payment to be waived up to $2,500, and you have $1,000 on the vehicle that you're looking at as a additional incentive. So very useful tool as well. All right, I'm going to change hats here and go to put on my GM Financial hat. And there are a number of tools that GM Financial has, and one of them is the Lease Maturity Viewer. And this is available to you through GMF Dealer Source. It helps you identify, so you can take that VIN 8 that you have off the report, and you can plug it into the Maturity Viewer and get detailed information on the customer. So again, allows you to have additional conversation. This gives you the full VIN information, it gives you customer information, gives you the leased end date and any market value that vehicle may have. So again, gives you a pretty good snapshot so that you have a good basis of conversation when you're reaching out to that customer before you contact them. All right, let's go through end of term options. There are 3 options, and this is where GM Financial varies from what Ally had out there and really provides you a pretty comprehensive way of purchasing and looking at leased end options for customers. Option 1 is a residual payoff, and in that situation, because of the way the deal has been structured, the lessee is not responsible for their lease balance or excess wear and use or the mileage. If they turn the vehicle in, it's the flip of that. They would, they would have to pay the remaining lease balance, they would have to pay the excess wear and use, and they would have to pay for excess mileage. And the third is kind of a derivative of those 2. Market-based, the lessee is responsible for both mileage and for the leased balance. So those are, again, laid out as options, and specifically when you go to the next portion of GMF Dealer Source, you have these 3 options. So this is a screen that's grabbed from, and it happens to be a Yukon as an example. but allows you to make the best decision for your dealership predicated on these options. You know, the customer could just turn it in. I guess I'll go to the next page. So customer in the middle there could just turn their vehicle in, and in this instance, we're about $2,400 worth of payments. So they would have to pay for those $2,400 worth of payments. It looks like there's no excess mileage on this one, so they didn't have any mileage, but if they did, they would have to pay that. On the purchase at payoff or for residual value, you can see that's at 39 and some change. And you have the option 3, which is purchasing for market-based, which you can see that's around 43.1. So this is typically the instance right now, specifically when you're looking at full-size trucks and full-size utilities in general. There's other ones, you know, predicated on the structure of the deal initially that could fall into this as well. But in this instance, you have the opportunity, you know, to buy this vehicle at residual and still be able to have almost $4,000 of wiggle room with what's happening from the standpoint of a market-based price. So maybe a hand-picked example, but one that shows you that going in and looking at each of these vehicles and trying to determine, you know, what the best situation is for you at the dealership to be able to purchase this vehicle and potentially make money as a certified pre-owned or on your used business as well. All right, some other useful tools. So again, think of that conversation that we were having with the customer at 4 months. Another part of that conversation can be, let's get an update on your mileage. It looks like you might be over on your miles. Well, you know, if you bring it in, I can help you by waiving, you know, a portion of that mileage up to $500. And how's the condition of the vehicle? You know, we can probably help you out. And, you know, if there's something we need to do on the excess, we can help you there. And if you do release with us, you don't have to pay the $600 disposition fee. So talking points that you can have, again, with the customer, these are waivers that are out there, that are available, that I would hope all of you have printed these off and have on your desks as you're desking customers. So that's step 4. Step 5, if you're a floor plan dealer and have dealer dividends, there's the multiplier that allows you know, to multiply the rewards that you're getting from GM Financial by hitting objectives. And there is this amount that if you get 25%, you get $100 per vehicle, and if you purchase at a 40% level, you get $200 per vehicle. So again, a nice spiff or addition to your overall portfolio. All right, another change, and I've gone in and looked at some of you actually coming from that area. On your EBE website, on the dashboard, very first or second page, you will see a purchase component, and this is above and beyond your 100%. So no matter what happens in the other buckets, you will get this as a payout. So your first 2 vehicles get you to $500, and three vehicles each after that gets you additional $500. So you can see a portion of the grid on the attached. These are anything that you buy from GMF Dealer Source, from FPOC, or from a closed auction, closed physical auction on the rental and company car. And this right now is a portion of EBE that's approved for Q1 with the potential for, you know, approving for subsequent quarters. But the dealer I looked at this morning, I think one was at $4,500, and I think there was another one that was around $8,000. So again, another portion of profitability from the standpoint of your used car operations. Step 6, there is an advanced policy, you know, for these auction purchases. They have to be purchased, as you see, from GM Financial. They're guaranteed for the 90 days for the advance. So this protects the dealership's front end, as you can see. and these are CPO vehicles. Have the $1,000 for the ones we're talking about with this group, or Cadillac has $1,200 for certified pre-owns from an advanced standpoint. So again, gives you a little bit of cushion as you're trying to sell the vehicle after you've purchased it. All right, couple more slides. Additional resources. I told you we weren't going through everything in the workbook, but there are also included in here in the playbook are word tracks. So if you wanted to kind of go through the scenario that I gave you at 4 months, that will be detailed out for you, so that if you need scripts, you need a starting point, that'll be out there for you. The month-by-month cadence, we kind of went through. I would recommend, again, initially, if you don't know what that is, printing off that calendar and having that available for somebody to, hey, I'm talking to this customer and they happen to be 6 months out. What are they receiving? You can go through that. Pre-term inspection. This is something that probably doesn't get used as frequently as it should, but shows you how to schedule it, where to schedule it, etc., and gives you the opportunity to integrate that into a procedure at the store. There is a report in GMF Connect that's a very useful report that recaps what's happening with your vehicles from an off-lease perspective. So once you get that vehicle back from a customer, do you buy it? Does somebody else buy it? And do they buy it within a certain price range of where you could have bought it? Because you know, the benefit to you of purchasing one of these grounded vehicles is you don't have to pay somebody to go there. You don't have to pay as high buy fees. You don't have to pay transportation, gas, etc. So a huge benefit to purchasing that vehicle at your store. And this will show you again what's happened with your vehicles. I took a look at one, it's been a few weeks, that had 10 vehicles coming back. They had purchased none of those 10 vehicles. 5 had been purchased by other dealers, and all 5 had been purchased within $200 of where the dealer could have purchased it. And remember, those dealers would have had to pay transportation and a variety of other things to get that vehicle to them. So just a way of looking at, you know, is there an opportunity for me to buy these and buy them within a certain price point. We are also asked to provide auction data and locations, so that's in the playbook. And then we've already talked about EBE and Pinnacle. Pinnacle has a different purchase component, very similar, but a different purchase component than EBE. But that will be detailed in the playbook as well. All right, additional resources. We also have product specialists, and you also have your dealer account reps for GM Financial. They are your first line of person to contact on lease playbook information. Then obviously these product specialists bring a lot to the party and can get you into more depth. If you had somebody, a used car manager, that maybe wasn't purchasing anything and you wanted to see what that opportunity was, one of these people, and you know, whether it's Renee, Sean, or Greg there for you in the Northeast, good resources for you to reach out to you know, be able to answer any questions you might have from a lease playbook perspective. All right, today we went through the step-by-step guide, started at step 1, understanding the opportunity, and Melissa took you through the dashboard. We took you through the communication from 12 months down to, you know, when they terminate. We went through tools, the maturity viewer, and end of term options, and what decisions that can help you make in regards to customers and how you communicate them. We also went through the tool that we have with the waivers and how you can use that to have a conversation with the customer. The next phase was purchasing these grounded vehicles and what those advantages are. And then we had a couple of other endings here with the advanced policy and with who you can contact should you have any questions. As I said, the playbook was posted a few weeks ago, and it's in two places. If you go to Global Connect, mine actually transitioned to something else, but it's still up there within the feature page. So it's there. And it's also available in GM Program Info on the Resource tab. So if you wanted to pull down a copy of that, have it available to review, it's out there and available for you to review. All right, so I think this is my last one. It's a great opportunity. I would, three things that I would ask here is, find out and get that lease dashboard from your district manager. That's the only way it can be delivered at this point. We're working on solutions around that and getting it directly to you, but your district sales manager is the person that can get that report to you. Pull a copy of the lease end retention playbook, as we just talked about. Make yourself familiar, develop a plan around how you're going to get those customers who are returning to re-lease with you, and then also is there an opportunity to purchase some vehicles and make some money on the used car lot, and then print the step-by-step guide and make sure that they have a procedure that they're following one after the other. So Kevin, with that, I think we're done with the presentation part of it, and we can open it up to questions should anybody have any.
Yeah, very good. Thanks so much, Dan and Melissa. We appreciate it. Folks, just hit #6 if you have any specific questions. You can also, if you're feeling shy, you can shoot it to me through the chat and I'll pass it along to Dan. But please feel free to jump in. This is a really good opportunity to verify what's going on with this great opportunity. #6. #6 if you have a question. Anyone? There we go. Bueller? No? As you know, Dan, the Zone 4114 crowd is very shy, as you can see.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I think so. Everybody's good. We want to get a real good comfort level that everybody had an opportunity to, take advantage of this moment to ask any questions. Okay, going once, twice, and three. Mr. Ahern, I think we're in great shape, and I'm sure I'm going to, just as a reminder, I've taped this. I'm going to put it into a YouTube, and I'll get it out to everybody across the zone. I'll copy you on that, Dan, and we'll go from there. If we have additional questions, I know we can get a hold of you, sir. I appreciate it.
No, thank you, and hello and goodbye to all of you in Philly, in Harrisburg, and the rest of the area. So miss you guys.
All right, thanks again, Dan. Really appreciate you taking time out to work with us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a great day, everybody.